to start with this crappy photo, which I picked obviously because it's crappy. Okay. And we're going to fix it. Does that make sense? It's got kind of everything going wrong with it. It's got the person, whoever, this is like off of eBay or something. That's why it's so crappy. They're too close. Okay. They're over here to the right. They're over here. Over here, they're too close. So it's sort of forcing the perspective a little bit. They used a flash, so it blew out this whole side of the picture. You know, the back, and just everything about it sucks. Now, kind of what you want to do, or at least I want to do when I'm doing this, is I want to sort of get this thing back to some sort of base level of not horrible. And then I can sort of, if I want to push it beyond that, I can do that. So when you're looking at, let's see if I can find something real quick. Okay, so we're starting with that, okay? And then what we're going to do here, and this is how I would do it. And by the way, I'm going to uninstall and reinstall Photoshop hopefully today. I just haven't been able to get enough time. You're going to come in here with your pen tool, and you're going to come in here, and I'm making a really crappy selection. Hang on. And think about these little curves, like spend some time on this. And we're going to go and do the whole perimeter of this thing. And get a nice clean selection. Does that make sense?
I have a question.
Sure.
Why are you using that tool instead of the polygon one?
Because the polygon tool isn't that accurate.
I see.
I use the polygon tool here. I'll show you. If I use the polygon tool is just really down and dirty, really, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So let's go. I'm using the polygon tool now. I can't even get a curve with this. I'm going to get all these hard points.
Oh, I see. I see why now.
Here, it's not, it's fine if something's super geometric. See, like right there, that's a curve.
Yeah, there's a curve.
That's going to make nothing but points.
A shortcut.
I'm glad you asked that, because why that's important is to start identifying when do I use what tool for what, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big thing. And then we're going to still, once we go through this process, we'll go through some more sophisticated and some not sophisticated selection tools, because selections kind of are your baseline in Photoshop. If you can't do selections, you really can't do anything. Okay. And there's just a variety of tools to do selections in here. Now, with the pen tool, I can get in there and very much control exactly what's going on. Okay. That's why I'm using that for this. Now, are there other tools I could use? Yeah, but for this, I probably use the pen tool because I really want to make sure I get it right. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So let's go back to here. And I would go around the whole perimeter of this thing. Let's see if I have it. I don't know if I have it. I don't think I do. Oh, I do. So let's say that I got the whole selection. This is a lousy selection, but that's fine. And Photoshop screwed up. Let's get this down here. Now, sometimes what you'll get is this. If you notice, it's really selected the background. You see that?
Yes.
So you're going to want to go up here to select, inverse, and there's the hotkey for it, which I always forget. I think it's Shift Command I. And I'm going to go inverse. So now it's selected the camera. Okay, but in this case, we do want the background. So you're probably going to end up actually with, hang on. When you do your selection, you're more than likely going to end up with this, where it does select the camera. Okay, I want to get rid of the background, so I'm going to go select, inverse. Now it's selected the background. I'm going to make sure so there it is. I'm going to make sure I'm not on the background. I'm going to unlock that because otherwise I can't do this. Then I'm just going to hit delete. Oops. And I've gotten rid of my background. Oops. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So now we've got this. Now, I'd also have to make sure I go in here. And look at it, I got this schmutzies, don't do that. Don't have a dirty selection. This is a selection I did this morning really fast. That's why it's crappy. I would spend the time on it. Then come in here, same drill. Now what I'll probably do here, let's grab this. So we go to our paths palette, click on the thumbnail, delete. Now we've got that. Now, when I have little things like that, I can probably come in here, soften up my eraser. I don't want it totally soft there, so I'm gonna do it about 50. You know, some of this stuff I can just clean up like that. Okay. This is not a good select. This right here is all wrong. This should have been selected out. But I can also shift, click and hold. And I can get that straight line on anything as a straight line. Then I got to go in here and I got to make sure I got a nice clean selection and it's all good. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we want to have a nice clean selection to start. Let's go to, you know, because eventually we want to get somewhere closer to here. Okay. So if you notice now all this schmutz here, that's all cleaned up, cleaned up a little bit up here. This blasted out business from the flash is now toned down. Now I could play around with this lens color. That's not, for me, that's not the right color. So I could go back to my hue saturation and I could just go, which one looks better? On yours, it'll dial it in real time. It won't have that stupid flashing. Or I could do this. I could go, well, maybe it's reflecting the same color as the background. So then I could go back to hue saturation and hit our little colorize thing. And that looks pretty good. This texture here got cleaned up. If you look here, that's pretty dirty and blown out. Knock down that shadow, that really hard cast shadow right here. Cleaned up this screw right here. If you look at it here, it looks really kind of dirty and screwed up. Okay. And I'm going to show you here in a second what it did. What else? You know, obviously gave it a seamless background and a reflection and a shadow. Okay. Also, I don't know if I did it on this one. I should have. Let's see. Yeah, I did. So if you notice here now, the pen text, the actual logo, and this little rubber strip right here, it's sort of darkened up and cleaned up. This one needs to be cleaned up a little more, but the pen text is sticking out a little more now, and it just looks a little better. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I did is, let's turn a bunch of this stuff off. So let's turn it off. And I screwed up right here. So let's look at something real quick. So I think I deleted a layer here. Hang on, I might not have. So I screwed up and I didn't keep my my colored lens. You need to keep that colored lens. Okay. So what I did in the beginning, what I do in the beginning here is I take this, I grab the Marquee Tool. Now here's the problem with this right now. Mine's not giving me a preview of it. But what happens with the Marquee Tool is you're making it in Photoshop. While you're making it, you can hold down your Shift key and you can move it around so you can line it up on this lens. So what I did is I did that, then I cut and pasted the lens onto its own layer in color, and I just saved it. I turned it off and I saved it. Does that make sense? So I just cut and paste on its own layer. The reason I did that is then I then came, because this camera is black and white, the only thing I did was I cut and pasted the color lens out, because that's the only thing I need to keep in color. Okay. So it's wherever it is. So I kept that, okay? Now I'm just turning it off for now. Then I went to hue saturation on this layer. And I just took the hue saturation all the way to gray, all the way desaturated. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah? You guys there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now the reason that's important is if you notice here, and you can't do this with everything. The only reason I can do it with this particular object is because it's black and white, or the object is actually black and white. If you notice on this side of the camera, it's warmer, and then it goes pretty cool, and then it goes really kind of greenish, bluish cool over here. You guys see that?
Yeah.
So if I come over here and I make this all a gray value, I've eliminated that temperature shift problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I don't want to deal with, you know, it's kind of blue over here, it's kind of warm over here, it's kind of this over here. I couldn't do this if it was a red car or something. It wouldn't work. But in this case, it does. Now, what I want to do here. So this one's cleaned up already a little bit. Let's go back to the original. And let's pretend that this is my separated file. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in and I'm going to make a little selection. Now I can use my corner tool because I don't have to be super crazy accurate here. And I'm going to select this little area right here because that's where I'm going to be working. And the reason I'm doing that is I'm using that as like a mask. So it means that my brush or whatever, like if I'm using a brush, it won't go outside of that selection. Okay. So I'm going to go to my clone tool. There's a bunch of different ways we could do this, but I want to use regular tools for now. I'm going to sample this little area right here. And then I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to clean up all this crap. And then I could go right against this with my corner because I know I'm not going to go over. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to clean up all this chips and all this stuff, all this stuff. This little variation right here. Let me get my right here. This. I want to get all this stuff cleaned up. That's job one. You know, this overspray right here, whatever that is. Maybe this screw, maybe, you know, just anywhere where it looks crappy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
You can see here, I sort of started it, and this is from a demo, so I'm not going all the way to total finish here, you know, but you can see I cleaned it up quite a bit, especially over here. You see that? One of the things I'm going to do is now I'm going to grab, let's say this shape. And as it goes out over here, it becomes less important, so I'm not going to worry too much about that selection. You know, I'd probably do this with my pen tool. I'm doing it this way just real quick. Because this actually isn't a super. So I'm going to go here, there. Now I'm going to make sure this is on its own layer. Let's go all the way to the top. Let's go here. I want to go right. You're going to have a lot of layers in this. Okay, and then I'm going to go to my palette. I'm going to go to grayscale, and I'm going to pick probably something around here. And then I'm going to grab my gradient, make sure it's going color to nothing. So it's showing the checkerboard. Then I'm going to drag that gradient that way, just like that. And now I'm going to go to my multiply, because multiply just usually works really well for this with gray, okay? And now I can go, if I need to, I can go to my levels tool, and I could go, it needs to be a little darker or a little lighter, whatever it is. I think it needs to be a little darker. Let's just try it there for now. And what I'm going to do is, you can see right here, I couldn't make a sloppy selection like that. Well, let's see if I can do this. I don't think I can. Now, let's say I don't have this little thing showing all that. So this should be a better selection. So what I'm doing, as you can see, is I'm starting to knock down that glare. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Same thing I could do over here. Now I'm going to keep all these on their own layer because they might need to be readjusted in different ways. Let's see if I need here. I'm going to go back to my pen tool because that other thing's just not accurate enough.
So every time you make a selection, are you putting that selection on its own layer every time?
Yep. I want to have ultra control on this because here's the thing, as I work through this and I start fixing different areas, this area, the darkness or lightness will probably change because they're all related to each other. So I'm going to make this a selection now, same drill. Let's see if I can go. I think it needs to go the other way, like this way. And then I'm going to go to my layers and try my multiple. It's already on multiple. Oh, I'm on the wrong layer. Hang on. A little too dark, so let's go back to our levels. And again, this is getting right there, isn't too bad. Let's see what it looks like without it. Yeah, see how blasted out that was without that? Now,
Yeah.
thing I should have done first that I always forget. This camera is the perspective is forced a little bit on it. Do you see that?
Can you say that again?
The perspective is a little bit forced on it. And what I mean by that is he was too close to it. So the right side of the camera close to the viewer is sort of forced. It's too much. Does that make sense? Because the guy was like up on it like that.
Got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Yes.
Oh. So there's a new tool here, edit, transform. And in here, you're going to have all your transform tools, scale, rotate, skew, distort, perspective, warp, then these things, okay? I can flip it horizontally, you know, things like that. But what I'm going to go to is, let's see if we can do it this way. Let's go to edit, transform. Let's try perspective. And that means I should be able to pull this. Yeah, just like that. That's a little better. I know it's a little thing, but it matters. Okay, so what that basically did, because I know it's when I grab perspective on those 2 points, it'll just move both of them like that. Does that make sense? Just like in perspective. So if I took a square and I did the perspective tool and grabbed the bottom, it would just do that. Okay, but all your tools are under that edit, transform for this particular type of thing. And we're going to use those a lot in here. Okay, in this project. So does that make sense, you guys?
Yes.
Yes.
So on this part of starting to knock down this blasted out light, I'm going to go around here and I'm going to look at all the spots where because I just want to get it under control, because I can add my own highlights. I can bump it up as much as I want. Once I get it sort of toned down where there's sort of an evenness to it, then I can do whatever I want with it. I want to go all the way over here, I think. This is a lousy selection, but it's okay. Now I'm going to do the same thing here. Make that selection. Go up here, make a new layer. I'll put lens lip here. And then I'm going to drag it right over that again. And then I'm going to go back to my multiply. and see how that looks. Now I could also take a soft eraser. So I'm going to take a big soft eraser for this and put it all the way to soft. I'm going to knock down the opacity to like 50% or wherever, somewhere in there. Make it big. And I'm just going to soften that edge. You can see that's better. So I softened that hard edge right there on the selection. And now, see how we're starting to get rid of that glare?
Yeah.
And I could also go, well, maybe I want a little of that shine, because I would. Maybe a little more. So I'm going to pull up the opacity a little bit and get a little bit of it where it's within reason. That's a little more within reason, okay? Now, here's a little trick. It's the same trick, actually, but it works pretty good on this. This is really a dirty, blown out mess, this texture. But I don't want to lose that texture. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm going to go same drill. I'm going to go make a selection, make a better one than I'm making. You really want to work on your selections here, because nothing screams amateur more than lousy selections. Like if I see something in the marketplace and it's got, what do you call that? You know, hard edges where it shouldn't have hard edges, and edges don't meet correctly or something, it just immediately my mind goes to, you know, crappy work. And by the way, I'd argue the public doesn't know anything about that, but subconsciously they do. I think it telegraphs an unprofessional product, and it, then subconsciously telegraphs, I don't want to have anything to do with that company because it feels amateurish. And I believe that, okay, that subconsciously, if nothing else, your brain's sort of making that decision. Does that make sense?
I agree.
You make a lot of decisions you don't even realize, we all do, that we don't realize we're making. So now I'm going to make this selection. And I'm going to do the same drill, but you're going to see here, it'll clean this up. So now we got our, I've already made the selection for texture. I'm going to go right over it. Deselect it. Oops. Now I might have to go a little darker here. Yeah, that's not too bad. And you can see it sort of cleaned it up a lot. You guys see that?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Because really what was happening, and it's not like it's perfect. I could still, I mean, I could do this endlessly, to be honest with you. I could go in here and keep tweaking. The reason you're seeing that little line right there is because I didn't make a good selection, okay? Or this stuff right here, that's what's really screwing it up, because I didn't make a good selection. I got to make a nice tight selection. But you know, you guys are getting the point, I think. What's really going on there is that that was a schmutzy, kind of dirty thing. And when such a blasted light hits it, it sort of emphasizes all of it. So if I take a gray and I integrate that gray by using the multiply layer, the darkness and everything sort of knocks back the highlightiness of all the crappiness. Does that make sense? It's a weird way to explain it. That we've probably forgotten about, but right here. So what I get is a lot of people who, to solve this problem, and by the way, I still have to dial that in. I have to make sure I have a good selection, so on and so forth, right? They go in here and they go, oh, I'm just going to get the burn tool, which makes things darker. Let's undo our texture. And let's go back onto the camera layer. I'm going to make a copy of this layer because I'm going to ruin it. And they go, and they just start darkening it. And you can see it just blows, it kind of, everything sort of disappears, like all the detail and everything sort of just goes away. You see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the texture kind of goes.
It's bad.
Yeah. And they think like, that's the same thing. No, it isn't. Okay. Same thing up here. You know, if I use this tool, there's sometimes where it's great, but you know, like in a black and white situation, like, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It can be a good tool, but people don't actually look at what it's doing a lot. Now, what it is good for, let's go to our camera layer. Let's make it smaller. Now, exposure just really means how much strength it has. And right here, so you can see I've gone into my burn tool. it's telling the midtones. I actually want to go into the shadows to affect the shadows. And I'm just gonna sort of rub across this. I think that's too dark, so I'm gonna go much less. And you can see how it just darkens up that little strip in there.
Yes.
It just makes it look a little better. I'm gonna do the same thing with the logo, just darken up that logo a little bit. There you go. And you see what it's doing. It's not really hitting anything other than the black because I told it to just focus in on the shadows. Now, the reason it's working pretty well here is that there's a very clear contrast between the lights and the darks. When I go over here to do this, see how it gets sloppy and goes outside?
Yeah.
Because it's just not as clear. So in here, I'd have to make a little more work. I'd have to probably come in here and, you know, make a mask shape right here and clean that up and maybe clean that up and that, you know, and then maybe, you know, there's just different ways I'd probably have to tweak that a little bit. Could also say it's a little further from the camera, not as important, so I probably wouldn't put as much emphasis on it. Now, at some point, I'm going to turn back on my lens, wherever that is. There it is. I'm going to turn back on my lens, and what I had originally was just this, you know, the color of the lens from the photo, correct?
Correct.
But I'm going to dial that in. Now, here's another thing we're going to do. We want to give it a background. So one of the things I'll usually do is I will give it just a standard white background because I just want to, you know, now I want to start seeing this thing. Now, another thing to do when you're doing these things, I think we talked about this, is I will give things, when I first do the selection, I will do a gray background. The gray background is going to show me if I have fringe, if I have over, you know, fringy white around it or fringy dark around it, because it's a mid-tone gray. And I can come in and I can start really cleaning up my edges and stuff this way. This one looks like it's pretty much, it's been cleaned up. You know, I clean up this right here too, this white right here. So it looks like this one was kind of cleaned up. I probably cleaned that up a little. There's a little bit of dark on that. That might be okay. Another thing I might do, and this looks like it's okay. I might have done it already. Like in the original photograph, this was sort of off. It was sort of short focus. So this back here was getting a little bit softer edged, which is, you know, that's good. So maybe, you know, and in a photo, I might go, here's our blur tool, okay? In a photo, I might come in here and go, well, I want this to start to go out of focus a little bit. And I can just paint over that area. Oops, probably on the wrong way. I can paint over that area. See how it's blurring the edge a little bit, you guys?
Yes.
So I might want that. I might want it to go a little out of focus on that side and just sort of get the appearance of sort of a soft focus shot. You don't want to overdo that. You don't want anybody to notice it, okay? Now, so what I usually do is I get all that cleaned up, and I do that in the beginning, by the way. I get all that cleaned up, and then I go, I want to put a seamless on here. Does everybody know what a seamless is? Seamless background? It's when they set up a, for, you know, especially for a, well, they do it with humans too, but especially for a product, they'll put, you know, they'll put the backdrop is just a sheet of paper that rolls down softly, like, you know, rolls up like that, right? That's why it's called seamless, is it just, you don't see it really. It just gives it a, you know, sort of just a soft background. Does that make sense? So we're going to emulate that this way. But what we're going to do is we're going to go whatever color you want. Now, here's another thing. I'm going to pick this blue. It's going to be way too much. It doesn't matter because I can dial it in. So now I'm going to go back to my gradient tool. I'm going to hold down shift so I go straight. And I've got a nice little seamless background, right? But it's too much. So I'm going to go to my hue saturation. I'm going to desaturate this a little bit. It's just too much. Maybe there. And I could also, if I wanted, I could darken it a little bit. And you can see we're starting to make this thing look a little better. So let's do something, and you might not really get to this till tomorrow, and it's fine. I'm not expecting everybody to finish this by tomorrow, by the way. Probably by, what's tomorrow, Wednesday? Probably by Thursday. Okay, so now let's take this whole camera. So I'm going to go option. If I go option, you can see I get 2 arrows, which means I can drag it and I'll make a copy. So I'm going to make a copy here. I'm holding shift. And now I'm going to go image. And then we have to go not under image, by the way, I'm sorry. If I go to image and I go flip canvas vertical, the whole canvas will flip. I don't want that. If I just want an object to flip, I got to go image, or I mean edit, back to our transform tools, flip vertical. And now it's flip vertical. Now I got to make sure this is a little bit behind. I got to make sure it's behind it, the original image. And now it is. Now, normally I would have to fix the lens here for the perspective. Don't worry about that. I don't want to get that into the weeds on it. Now I'm going to go back to, if you notice now it's angled off wrong. I'm going to go to edit, transform, skew. And this one, if I grab this little handle here, hold shift, it'll just pull it up and kiss that edge. It's hard for me to do it because I'm getting that stupid flashing again. But close enough. And now I'm going to go make a layer mask like we did before. Only here's the thing. What is it? Black conceal, black reveals, white conceals, right? So I'm going to switch, I'm going to go to my gradient and I'm going to switch it from this transparent thing to black and white. So go to basics and I want black and white right there, black to white. And I'm going to go, I'm on my layer mask. I'm going to go shift, pull up, and it fades it out. You guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Now we're getting a reflection. Now,
Yes.
now I'm going to make another layer. All of them I'm going to keep behind my camera. I'm going to make this, make sure that you know this is the camera. And this is my shadow. You know, there's a bunch of ways you can do shadows, but let's try this. Now, normally I would finesse this shadow. Let's try this actually. Let's make another copy of the camera. I don't know if this will work. And let's go. And I'm going to fill this with my gray. Oops. That's weird. Hang on. Okay, there we go. And again, I got to put this behind everything. And the light's to the right. So let's just go edit. And now here's another one in your transform tool set, distort. And that just lets me pull this thing kind of however I want to pull it. And this is not going to be an accurate shadow, but if I was doing this just for a quick, showing somebody where I'm at or something like that, this would work fine. Normally I would dial the shadow in more accurately and all that. But for this, we did. Let's just say that's good. It's not, but let's just say it's good. And then I'm going to go back to multiply again. And I'm going to knock down the opacity. And then I could go up here to filter. And this is real simple. Blur, Gaussian blur. Okay, so here's all your blur tools. We'll talk about all those later. And I can just make sure this preview is clicked. And I can dial in how much softness I want on it. There's a little preview in there too. So let's just leave it like that. And now we've got all that going on. Does that make sense? And then I could start coming in here and going, let's try something here. Let's go up over our lens. Now, again, I could go, maybe I want a contrasting color. Maybe there's some other color in this image Do I want a warm reflection in the camera or in the lens? There could be something off camera. That's not too bad, actually. Like maybe I like this ambery color. I just tend to go for that. Maybe I'll desaturate it a little bit. Maybe saturate it. Who knows? I'm gonna go with a little more saturated. And let's try something else here. Let's see if we can do it this way. So let's look at, oops. I'm going to select this shape. Remember, we can go Command and click the thumbnail. So that's the actual shape. Now here's another little thing we haven't talked about. Under Select, and we're talking about modifying a selection. Okay, so under Select, I can go to Modify. So literally I'm modifying the selection. I can go, don't worry about these two right now. Expand or contract or feather. So we're just concerned with expand or contract right now. And I want to contract. So I'm going to go, and it's going, you want to contract by 3 pixels? I'm going to say 10. Let's see what that looks like. Not enough. I'm going to go a little more. And I'm also, I don't like that select, let's see, maybe it'll be fun. So I'm going to go select, modify, contract. I'm going to go 20. Now, it's on its own layer, so I can probably move it, so it'll be fine. And let's see if we can take, I don't know if this will work, but let's try it. I'm going to take this blue and see what it looks like as a reflection. Go back to my transparent or color to transparent thing. Now I don't like that hacked up edge, so I would fix that. But what I'm also going to do is probably take my blur tool and blur that edge a little bit anyway. I would not have a pointy edge like that on something like this. You can see I can start to get a little reflection. Let's see if I can do an overlay on that, make it look interesting. That's kind of interesting. So I do this a lot where that was actually kind of interesting right there. It's so subtle. I might like that one. That's a totally different thing. That's kind of interesting. That's a totally different thing. It highlighted that top part. So I kind of like, what was it? I kind of like that. Yeah, I like that. So it feels a little bit like it's reflecting some of that blue from around the room. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And what that does is it speaks to, okay, I got this amber color, which I can justify in 100 ways, but now I'm pulling a little bit of that subtle blue back into it that still puts it back into the room, but still gives me a contrasting color. Does that make sense?
Yes.
And by the way, the amber is basically an orange. So what do we have? We have a complement, right? So those two things, vibrate a little bit. It's kind of nice. Then if I introduce a subtle blue back into it, it's like, okay, it's still in the same room. It's still reflecting some blue from the room, but it's picking up some warmth somewhere. Now I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to put room bounce. Now I'm going to take the same thing I just used. No idea if this will work. And back to my overlays. That's not too bad there. The other ones are too much so far. Not too bad there. Too much. Too much. Now, if something feels about right, but it's too much, I can always reduce the opacity on it. So it looks like that's too bad. So you see what I just did? I'm gonna dial this down a little bit. I'm gonna pull the opacity down in here. What I just did is really subtly, look at, there it's off. So we got this warmth. Now I turn it on and it cools off all the grays. Do you see that?
Yes.
So what does that do?
It's reflecting.
But from a visual perspective, what it's doing is it's placing this object in the same light situation, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with that little subtle reflection in the lens. I need to speak to, when you're doing this kind of thing, because a lot of times you'll get assets for, it could be for all sorts of things. You'll get assets for things. They're all from disparate places. Okay, so they're like, hey, here's all the assets. And you're like, these are all in different lighting, all in different temperatures, all in, you know, blah, 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 blah. I've got to unify all this stuff, because if you don't do that, and this is something that people don't really know, when you're compositing things together or whatever it is, like kind of like, we're not totally compositing, but we kind of are. Well, we are, because the camera's clipped out and we're putting it into a different environment. One of the main things you've got to do is you've got to get the temperatures and the lighting to all sort of feel like they're in the same environment. Otherwise, it's never going to look like anything other than you took a pair of scissors and cut something out of a magazine and glued it on another piece of paper. It's always going to feel like that. I'm sure you guys have seen that stuff over and over again. You know what I mean? Where you see all these hard-edged cut out things and they look like collages. And I see it all the time with student work. And it's like, they took a picture, you know, for a class project or something. They took a picture of themselves, you know, like they're fighting a dragon, and then they go clip it, you know, it's for a project. And they clip a dragon into it and they put themselves in it and they add fire to it and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, the fire's not reflecting on anything. Okay, so that doesn't make any sense. All the lighting's different. All the lighting's come from different directions. It just looks like a hack job. It doesn't look believable at all. Okay, then you see people with Photoshop who do stuff that, like, I mean, I see these things all the time. Like Vanity Fair does this. Well, they have a fold out cover, right? And it's every gigantic celebrity on the planet or rock star on the planet. And I'm looking at that going, did they actually get everybody in the room? Because it's very hard to do with people with that level of celebrity. Because this person's in South Africa, this person's on a film shoot in Florida, this one's on a film shoot in this place, this one's doing a concert over here. This, you know, they're all over the world constantly. And to get all these people into one room at the same time for a photo shoot isn't always very easy. It's not easy to do. So a lot of times those are composited, and sometimes you're looking at them going, you can't tell. You know what I mean? It's really hard to tell.
How do you select the camera again when you made
When I've already made the selection?
Before you made the little purple gradient around it? How do you select the camera again?
Okay, so just the whole camera?
Yeah.
Okay, it's the same way that we do it when we want to select the path.
Mhm.
We want to make a selection we want to reselect something that we've selected on another layer.
Mhm.
And there's probably some other places. You go to, like, I already have this camera selected. So I go to that layer, which is, let me find it. I got this thing over it. So here it is. So here's the camera, right? So I just go to the thumbnail. You guys should actually have a thumbnail. My thing is screwed up. And I'm going to go Control or Command, and I'm going to click the thumbnail, and that reselects it.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's how you put the gradient on it?
Yeah, but I went on to a new layer.
Yeah.
Okay, so all these things I'm keeping, because now when I get all this stuff starting to work, hopefully, let's deselect that, Command D, Control D. You know, I might go, okay, over here, let's say. Let me find it. Right there, I might go, well, that needs now, in relation to everything I've done, maybe that needs to get a little lighter. You know, it doesn't, but, or darker, you know. So I want to be able to dial those things in, you know, based on another thing you got to remember when you're doing this stuff. And I don't care if it's a painting, I don't care if it's a drawing, I don't care if it's an illustration, I don't care if it's this. a value, you know, your dark or light, or your color, doesn't mean anything until you place it next to the color or value it's going to be next to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you might throw down a value like I did, like that gray thing. And then later on, as you're building other values around it, you go, well, that's way too dark or that's way too light. And you got to adjust it, And it's the same thing with temperature. You might throw a temperature down and go, that's really cool. And then as you're building whatever else, the other colors in it, all of a sudden you go, that doesn't work anymore. And now I could go to my hue saturation and maybe just slide through the saturate or the hue slider and go, oh, that greenish cast looks a little better. And then I'll dial it in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So you're constantly fine tuning as you're moving along. Okay. And then I'm always thinking of stuff going, well, I could put I don't know, I could do this to it. I could do that to it. It starts leading to things once you understand what you're doing, right? Like maybe I could put a really strong edge light on this thing, could be that. Okay. It could be anything. So I'm, you got a big picture idea of what you're trying to do, but once I dial it all in, then I kind of go, okay, is there anything I can do to really plus it up and make it look like I might come in here now and go, I don't mind having and I would dial this in better than I'm going to do right here. I don't mind having a little highlight there. I'm going to go back to blur, Gaussian blur. And you see it blew it out, which is what I want. Like more like that. So now I'm controlling the highlight and I don't mind having a little sparkle on there. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I don't want to overdo it. But now I am going to put some highlights on that makes the product look nice and shiny and new. Okay, guys, so throw them in the folder in the morning. Just give me a JPEG of it. And don't flatten your file. Do a save as, save one as a JPEG. And just throw that in there and as it's in process. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. I'll see you in the morning.
All right. See ya. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.